before we finish up, I want to talk about a few more things that I think we should teach in school in order to master ourselves, in order to become independent. One of them is emotional regulation / management, I'm calling it. Sometimes we say controlling our emotions, but I think that's wrong. I think we are unable to control our emotions. We're only able to manage them or regulate them. So I think that is a big part of growing up in general, just maturing, becoming a adult in quotes, because again, back to our adult conversation if you want to know more about that. But yeah, having that emotional management. Do you think that's something that everyone should learn throughout schooling?
Yeah, it's critical. I think having emotional management and self-reflecting is really what I do think that really does determine. There's a big step change when you actually are able to achieve that. I think that's what I'd say about it. So those people that can internalize how they're feeling and to be able to understand how they should manage that are in a much better situation than those that aren't even aware of how they're feeling a certain way. And so, yeah. And like you said, you're going to go, I would agree with that. It is management or regulation. You don't have control over certain feelings. I mean, even now, as me as a 40-year-old, there's times that I go, why did I feel that way or whatever? And, you know, I don't think it's always important in justifying it. Like it's important to reflect on why you did that because there can be some learnings. But sometimes you just, there isn't a learning and that's okay. So it's just, you know, all right, well, you know, I'm in this space. How do I best manage it? And then getting yourself out of that space. So, and I do think you can teach that early with kids. I mean, I don't know, a child psychologist is probably going to be much better in explaining these things. But from my point of view, like kids are actually going through the process of realizing emotions, particularly as they start going to primary school. So I think having a heavy focus on that early on while they're actually developing those skills is probably going to put them in a very good position. It's kind of one of those things that doesn't see, I guess people probably don't see the value in doing it, but it will pay off because you become you'll become more efficient in life once you understand these things. And you become, you're not very efficient when you don't understand how to emotionally regulate. You'll waste a lot of time on things that you can't manage, I guess.
Yeah, people who are less capable of regulating emotions are typically more reactionary, which means they're typically going to make decisions that they may not necessarily agree with or want to make if they had the ability to internalize it, think about it, and then choose how they want to respond. So I think a good path, or I mean, this is just off the top of my head, I hadn't thought about this beforehand, but for learning about emotions is first off, okay, recognizing them, understanding how that affects us so that we can choose, okay, I'm in a bad mood. If I say something to someone now, it's going to be coming from a bad place. It's likely going to result in something bad. Do I want to allow that to get through, or do I want to just say, no, I'll stay quiet. I'll be by myself until I'm out of this mood. And then also understanding ways to get yourself into and out of moods, because we do have some control over it through physiological processes. But again, you can't always control it. It's like sometimes you just feel lousy. Sometimes you just feel ecstatic. You know, you can't explain it. It just happens.
Yeah, and I guess just being aware that or comfortable with being able to communicate that to others as well. So like, you know, if you're in a frustrated mood and you want a bit of time by yourself, you know, just letting people know that that's the case. Oh, look, I just need an hour at time. I'm not feeling the best. And I think that helps society as a whole because other people don't then blame themselves for certain things. So, you know, if we don't communicate aspects like that, then other individuals might think they had an impact and it might not necessarily be the case. So, you know, I guess can be a lot of confusion about our emotions and others. And so communication will help clear that issue up, I guess.
That's a very good point. And another benefit of actually doing this through the recommended schooling is that people will understand that. Like me and you, we understand that because we've been through that. We understand sometimes you're in a bad mood and you just, you know, you're saying things that you don't really mean. But it's not necessarily true that everyone throughout their life will realize that. Some people could get to 70, 80 years old and not realize that. So making sure that everyone, again, goes through school, and then we can say, okay, it's likely that they understand this. It'll be easier for us, I think, as human beings to get along, because they'll understand when someone says, I'm feeling in a lousy mood, I need to take some time for myself, because, they've learnt about it through school.
Yeah, and just understanding it's not emotions are not a persistent state, and that there's a spectrum of emotions. So I think like when you grow up, I think you're always sold like you want to do what makes you happy. And it's kind of like, yeah, but that's a not a persistent state. So there's periods in time which you can achieve happiness, but you got to realize that if you're not achieving that happiness, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that it's not a persistent state. Without sadness, you won't get happiness, and vice versa. So, I think understanding the spectrum of emotions and understanding that you're going to go through, you're transient, you're going to go through all those different states at different points in time, allows the individual to realize there's nothing wrong with them. I guess, when you're a kid, someone that might be, there's a lot of people that are a little bit more melancholy than others. And I think that's okay. That's what makes really good art at times. Like good musicians can be deeply, deeply sad about certain things, or really feel strongly particular emotions, and that's okay. Like you can express yourself in that frame of mind. We don't all have to be happy to be okay.
Yeah, when you realize that the contrast is what we're actually detecting, then you even start to gain an appreciation for those lower times. It's like, okay, this is a sad time, feeling a bit low now, which just means that I'm going to be happy sometime in the future. You can see it in that way, and in that way you can flip your emotions. So yeah, this too shall pass.
Yeah. And you can take opportunity too. So like some points in time in life, you're going to hit peaks. And so if you don't really understand that it's a sort of like a cyclical or like a sort of fluctuating or transient way, then you're not going to you might not set yourself up to make advantage of the most of that opportunity. But if you realize that, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling really good. This is a point in time that's hard to get to in life. I'm going to take most advantage of it while this is actually occurring, and then it's going to be over. So that realization that at some point it's going to be over allows you to take opportunity at that moment. I guess it's sort of similar. There's an analogy when people, have a life-changing disease and they say, oh, now I know what's really important in life. And it's because they're now forced to actually look and prioritize certain things. So, yeah, just understanding certain points in time in life you can't replicate, and it's to know when they're going to occur and take opportunity of that and really, take advantage.
That's a great point. I mean, yeah, having that awareness that, oh, okay, now I'm feeling really good. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be paying attention to everything now. And then it also gives us that, what would you call it? Maybe confidence, that peace to let that pass. Because, yeah, it's only fleeting. You've taken full advantage of it. And now you can let it pass. Like a lot of the problems we get into is that we get to that peak and then we want to maintain that peak. And that's just unsustainable. It goes against reality. So knowing that you're at the peak, appreciating it, and then knowing that, okay, I can let it go. It's all right. I'll come back to another peak. It may not be as high. It may not be as long, whatever, but it'll come back.
Yeah. And I think professional athletes, solo sport athletes are really need to be quite good at this, because you think about like a world number one tennis player, how do they continue playing once they now become ranked 3rd or 5th or 10th? How do they still then come back and become number one again? So I think for them, it's that realization that, at that state, I was able to achieve that. At this state, I'm actually not there yet, but that's okay. I'll do these actions in order to try and get back to that state and not allow it to impact me or deflate me or to, just give up, I guess, and go, I'm retiring. I can't get there again, kind of thing.
Yeah, and like you said, that's the importance of understanding that it's transient, that you're in a certain state for a certain period of time. It'll come back, it'll go, and then just making the most of it. One other one before we get going, I really want to highlight is perspective switching. So being able to look at something, an event, and see it from multiple angles. So like see the silver lining, see the bad parts of it, just being able to see that, okay, whatever is in front of me, whatever I'm confronted with, there is all the colors of the rainbow in there. It's wherever I put my focus, however I filter it down, is going to shape like how I go moving forwards. Like, I don't know, what's a good example? You get into a car crash or something, you know, as long as, assuming you're still alive, maybe you break a few bones or something, you can say that, oh, that's lousy. You can look at it very negatively, or you can look at it as, you know, oh, not necessarily thank goodness it wasn't worse, but maybe, you know what, that's given me a renewed contrast of life. Now I know what's important. Now I can see the values and things. I got into that crash because I was rushing to get a cup of coffee or something. Was that really important? Did I really need to do that? You know, being able to take that step back. So it's really looking at any event, no matter what it is, good or bad, and understanding that contained within that event is positive, negative, everything in between. And it's just being able to switch our perspective and choose what we focus on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's also highly valuable, not only for yourself, but then to be able to empathize with others. So, like, just because you've got a certain perspective and a certain way that you view the world, you have to understand that other people are not going to view it the same way as you, and they've got to live in this world like you do. And so having empathy and understanding of how they perceive the world is highly valuable. And I guess by changing your ability to change your own perspective helps you then be very empathetic for others and be able to sit yourself in their shoes, you know. So, okay, why is this person feeling this way? Or what, you know, like behaviors. Why does this person have a certain behavior they repeat? And what you often find is it's something that they've been taught in the past and they don't actually realize it. It's almost like unconscious. And we all have those little flaws. I was thinking about this, like a really good image would be, you know, just every person in the world, but they've got like a little dent on their head. And because we're all broken in some kind of way. And so just realizing, you know, that's the case is quite valuable.
Even that acknowledgement, first of all, realizing that the way that we see the world is based on the experiences that we've had. And so then understanding that, okay, the way that someone else sees the world is based on the experiences that they had. And that awareness that I may be unable to understand the experiences they've had. So I can't say for certain, like, whether what they're doing is purely good, bad, or whatever. It's just that they've been exposed to something. And so trying to, helps us put ourselves in other people's shoes, but also acknowledge that we can't put ourselves in other people's shoes because we haven't been through what they've experienced. So trying to, give us a different perspective on whatever it is.
Mm. Yeah, different points of view. And I think also like understanding that your emotions aren't transient allows you to understand that other people's aren't. So, you know, you can, I guess, at some points in time you're going to meet someone that doesn't like you or might just have certain flaws in their own sort of emotional regulation, and understanding that, because every time you see them, they might be annoyed or frustrated, doesn't mean that that's who they are persistently. So, you know, that person might be annoyed or frustrated when they're at school or when they're at work, but then they go home and they're a different person. So realizing that, we're all transient allows you to then understand that other people aren't stuck in an aggressive state or an upsetting state or I don't know, whatever state that can be annoying for others, realizing, they're not. And so that then allows you to go, what are the conditions that actually set them up into different states and how do I actually have an impact on that? And I think all this knowledge actually allows us to socialize at a much better level.
I definitely agree with that.